Charlie Belfontaine, and you're listening to the Homebuyer's Hour on WCPT AM 820, where the facts matter. And we have in the studio with us Ryan Mckane of Mint Realty, and I'm going to introduce him in a little bit. But first, I want to go ahead and introduce Patrick and Joey. Patrick, if you don't mind, give us a rundown on your business and tell us why you're important.
Good morning.
Oh,
Good
my
morning.
goodness. You're waking everybody up.
Good morning. Wow, it is a good morning. It is, well, it's a morning. I can say that much. I'm Patrick Loftus. I'm a real estate lawyer. My law firm is called Loftus Law. You can find me on social media because it's 2024 and that's where people are found. On Instagram, Loftus_law, LOF like Frank, T like Tom, US like Sam, if you're listening, not watching. Or find me on TikTok at Loftus Law.
Nice. And Ryan, if you don't mind, give us a rundown on your business, please.
Sure. My name is Ryan Mckane. I'm a real estate agent with Mint Properties is our team name. We're under Keller Williams 1 Chicago. I've been in the business for about 20 years now. I serve mostly the north side of Chicago, but I also go out to the suburbs. And I'm happy to be here today.
Sounds good. I'm going to be a little short. I'm thrilled you're here, too. And I'm doing this just to rub it into another real estate agent that I really like a lot. But I just want to go on record, Ryan, and say you're my favorite real estate broker in the entire city of Chicago.
Take that, Steve Davis. Take that. Yeah, that's right. I'm naming names. And Steve Davis, that just happened.
That did just happen. Joey, if you don't mind, give us your business, and then I want you to go straight into giving us an update on the market, please.
Why, hello, my name is Joey Matthews, NMLS 1330694. You can find me. Well, shoot, you can call or text me at 630-235-2405. Find me at thevaloannerd.com or across all social medias as at the VA Loan Nerd with this sexy saxophone.
You are the sexy saxophone.
I don't know what that
what
means.
is going on in the markets? It is a slow week in the markets, which I love a slow week because then I don't have to deal with volatility. Last week was awesome. We finally regained some traction in the mortgage-backed security and bond yields because of a correction to data that was released at the beginning of April last month. The PPI, CPI, producer price index, consumer price index numbers that were reported were they were overstated a month ago, and they came in significantly lower on correction, which is why we saw the wonderful gains that we saw. Next thing that we have coming up.
I'm curious on this stuff. How did
It's
they figure out
because
what went wrong?
the Bureau of Labor Statistics is probably just very understaffed or lazy. I can't tell you the real reason. Like it's crazy to see a adjustment going from hot to negative. Like literally, it went from hot to negative on the PPI index, which is crazy to me. The FOMC meeting minute. Oh, you know what? No, we do have the meeting minutes getting released today. I don't think we'll see a major reaction from that unless we see any indication that the Fed is talking about moving a rate cut up sooner based on the new data, or if they are pushing it back. So that is at 1 p.m. Wednesday, May 22nd Central Time. That is being released. The other thing that could move the market at all would be jobless claims tomorrow morning, but that's the stuff for this week. Next week will be a big week because we have the Fed's favorite indicator of inflation, personal consumer expenditures, being released on Friday, May 31st. And that will be the next time we see a major market mover, hopefully based on where producer price index, CPI, and really retail sales. Retail sales coming in flat month over month was huge.
That brings the rates down, right?
Well, it's because people are spending less because they have depleted their COVID savings. They have maxed out their credit cards, and maybe we're at this tipping point now. So if core PCE, personal consumer expenditures, comes in light, then we will see significant improvement in the markets.
So I want to go on record by saying Patrick is not helping me try to help this country. He's
Charlie,
not spending enough money.
stop spending all the money you're buying cars, you're buying plane tickets, and we're not gonna leave Joey out of this one. He's out there,
Hey, shut up!
spending loads and loads of money on an unnecessary, just going and having fun somewhere. Listen, you complain about all these indices and how they're coming in too hot, and then you go out and you do stuff that's gonna keep them up at the levels that you're complaining about. And I'm sorry, I'm starting to lose sympathy for all of the concern. I mean, what I'm hearing is that the rest of us.
Signed in for, Ryan.
What's that?
See what you signed up for.
I'm in. I'm all in.
I'm pushing buttons. I'm stirring the pot. This is what I was born to do. But Joey, what it sounds like, what I'm hearing you say is that for whatever reason, all of the panic that happened in April about these numbers and them coming in hot and inflation is still a big problem. I'm just about to switch insurance companies because, I'm on the side of spending less. I care about the people. Not so much. Fortunately, someone here actually cares. But what you're saying is they actually got those numbers wrong, which is super annoying for you because you had interest rates over the past, let's say, 2-3 weeks that were higher than perhaps they ought to have been. Did we lose Joey?
I don't know.
No.
I was waiting for Joey to respond.
I was trying to figure out if that was a question or a statement.
I'm giving him a cold shoulder. I'm giving him a cold shoulder. That's all I'm doing.
That's it. I love it. Wait,
Yeah.
here, take this shoulder. We were supposed to ask Joey something. I forgot what it was for a prediction.
Oh yeah, Joey.
Everything in the world is going to be terrible.
More on real estate. Nah, that's not good.
Sunshine is coming up.
So what's your general mood about the upcoming NFL season for the Chicago Bears?
That's what it was.
Really, that's where we're going. Hey, I'm okay with it. Right. If this is reality, then I would say that I wish we had loaded up this offense years ago.
Wow. Yeah, they just cut you out. That was all there is to it. So next time, talk better about the Bears.
Today on the Sports Cubicle After Show.
Right? We'll go straight to that one there. Hosted by Devin Tingle, our producer. All right, so I wanted to talk about when things go wrong, just like with Joey getting booted off right now when things go wrong.
It's kind of right on the nose right there.
Oh, no lie. So, Ryan, if you don't mind, share, give me something that happened to you recently, what things went wrong and what you have to do to fix these things.
This deal didn't happen fairly within the last few years, but I had a transaction in East Lakeview where the buyer decided to go with Chase, which most realtors and real estate professionals know that the big banks are not not the best with handling mortgages. And so she went with Chase. The appraiser came out, and I kind of knew, appraisers are randomly assigned, but I kind of knew that this appraiser really didn't know what he was doing. For one reason, he passed the property a few times while I was standing out in front of it. And then second, when we got inside, this is just a preference of mine, but it's also, just kind of, it's a little bit of an indication of what you're dealing with. He brought out like a tape measure to measure the unit. And I was like, okay, like most appraisers nowadays, they're using lasers or, some other faster method. And so here I am, like holding the other end of this tape measure while we're measuring the unit. Well, the appraisal came back about $20,000 low, and I knew that we weren't that overpriced. So, even though it took us about another 3 weeks to close, I basically told the buyer's agent we're not going to we're not going to close at that price. We're not going to negotiate on price. We are going to insist that your buyer goes to a different lender, one that knows what they're doing. And even though it pushed our closing date out about 3 weeks, we ended up closing at contract price and with no appraisal issues. So
I'm going to interrupt real quick. I want to make sure I understand something. You said that appraisals are randomly assigned.
Mm-hmm.
I was always under the impression that an appraisal company has a relationship with the bank, and the bank chooses the appraiser. Is that something that's not true?
They choose the AMC, but they don't.
What does AMC mean?
It's an appraisal management company.
Gotcha.
But they don't get to pick the particular appraiser. That was part of, what the government saw as being. It's funny how the government blames us for what they did back in 07, 08, but that was part of the reform that came after the housing crash. You could no longer choose which appraiser you use. Because when I first got in the business in 03, I was also a mortgage broker, and I had an appraiser that I used. I would just say, hey, can you go out and, I've got this order for you, so on and so forth. But they saw that as, just another means to defraud the public and have false appraisals and fake numbers and that sort of thing.
Appraisers took a lot of the heat in the housing bubble, and certainly there is some portion of the blame lies with them, but they took a big L there. But I think it's for the best that we're not sending out necessarily the appraiser of choice, but you do run into problems with appraisers. For example, going someplace like Ryan described that they're not familiar with. Whatever their inherent biases are, it gets assigned to that appraisal, and you're sometimes going to end up with a weird result. And this definitely happens in places where the population is predominantly people of color. If an appraiser has certain thoughts about that, you'll end up with low appraisals, and it happens more often there than it does in places where people look more like me, right?
Really?
And yeah, it's horrible. I mean, there's an anecdotal story.
For those listening, Patrick's a white guy.
I'm very pale. No, there's stories. One in particular is where there was a black woman who owned a home, and they sent two appraisers in, and they both appraised it much lower than what the value was of the property. And then they removed all of the stuff that showed that it was a black woman who owned the home, and they put pictures of a white family or whatever they did, and then sent an appraiser in, and all of a sudden the house is worth much more. And these are the kinds of things that are keeping people of color, people in communities where there are more people of color, you're essentially stealing value of their real estate when you send an appraiser who's not equipped mentally to treat it fairly. I mean, I went off on a little bit of a tangent there. I would also want to mention something that Ryan said about using a big bank as your lender. Don't do it. Chase, Wells Fargo, whenever I see those on a contract, I go, I'm not going to have a person that I can reach out to and contact. It's going to be an 800 number. They're going to have an extension they're never going to pick up. They're never going to respond to my phone calls. They're rarely going to respond to my emails. It will probably still close. And what sometimes happens, I know if I see a lot of like Wells Fargo, I haven't seen them originating loans here in this area for a while.
I've seen one in the last few years. So yeah, that's very rare.
The only one I
did
saw.
a lot of work with them when it was 203Ks.
Well,
but that was in the past.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they seem to have exited the Chicago area as far as originating loans. I did see one, and it was because my client was in their wealth man. Once you're in the private, the rich echelon of bank customer, all of a sudden the whole experience changes. But that was the only example. But I think if you're not knowledgeable in this situation, you might think that a broker is going to have higher rates because they're like a middleman, but it's not the case. It's not the case. You won't get a better rate at a bank than you will from a mortgage broker, and the mortgage broker is going to work much harder for you. Joey, I think, can probably let me know if I'm off base or not. I will once in a while see a bunch of Chase files come in all of a sudden, and it's because they're offering like teaser rates, and people can't resist. But Joey, how much harder do you? Well, I don't want to say how much harder do you work, but how much better is your process than, say, like a Chase?
Well, I mean, call me right now, right? Call me as soon as the radio show's over. I'll pick up. Like it's. Dude,
that makes all the
literally
difference.
That freaking stupid, right? Like, oh my gosh, I hate it when I see, or when people are like, oh well, Chase is offering this. I'm like, give me the loan estimate. I would love to see the loan estimate, and then also, reach out to your guy on Saturday and see what happens.
Well, let me ask you another question. How many times do you swoop in and have to rescue a Chase or a Wells Fargo file?
Dude, not Wells Fargo very much because they got out of the retail residential lending. So what Wells Fargo did, they're completely out of retail residential. The only time that they do mortgages is for their high net worth clients, typically. So you'll see them in the jumbo space still, but they don't like retail right now.
Good.
But in terms of Chase, I have to deal with a lot. And honestly, there's times where the borrower is so dead set on using them, but they still come to me to make them feel better. And should I do it? Should I offer my knowledge, what I know about how things work? I mean, I get paid for what I do, but I do it for free. So, Charlie, you sent over a referral, Nina. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have thrown the name out there, but I did. And online lender, right? Amazing rate, terrible communication, overquoted by $20K. I was like, hey, here's what your deal is going to look like at the closing table. And throughout the process, she talked to me. And I was just like, man, I am doing so much for free. But at the end of the day, I do care that people buy homes. And my initial quote to her from their estimate, I was within $500 on their actual cash to close, while the bank that she talked to and the loan officer was like, oh, no, this isn't going to change at all. I'm like, no, it's going to change like $20,000, I promise you. So it's just lazy people do lazy things.
Yeah, but I'm flabbergasted. I'm doing the abadaba over here. It's like, that's a lot of money when it comes to buying a house.
It's 4 plane tickets for Charlie. I mean, geez.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
Going to Europe. Sorry, I'm embarrassed to say that. So how did you fix that problem, Ryan?
So we just strongly insisted, like, because this buyer really wanted this condo, we said, well, if you really want it, you have to change lenders, even if that means we have to kick out the closing date a few weeks. And they did. And sure enough, they went with a local broker, no appraisal issues. And we closed about 3 weeks after we were supposed to. So it all worked out. It was just, it was a lot of hair pulling and arguing, but it got done. It just, seller was nervous. Seller, got really upset. But I was like, well, we can close and you can take about $20,000 less for your property, or we can work something out in the middle, or we can wait a few weeks and you'll get full price.
Did you have any hints or inclinations that was going to happen?
I just experience, just because I knew I was reluctant to accept the offer because they had a Chase pre-approval to begin with. But as soon as I saw that appraisal come in low and I knew that we weren't overpriced, it was just experience. I just said, hey, you got to switch lenders. That's all there is to it.
Again, that goes back to where the knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
I've had the same situation. It's like, I'm hearing that story and I'm just thinking, I can't help but think back to having the exact same situation where, we were at 327, the appraisal comes in at 310. Now, I was actually handling a transaction in the same building, very similar unit, and it was under contract at 354, and it came in at value. And so, I said to my client, I was like, Well, number one, you probably sold your place for a little bit too low of a price, but we're where we are. But if you want to close sooner, then you take 17 grand and put it in a paper bag and light it on fire, or we can basically cancel the deal and find someone that's going to go with a lender that's not going to undervalue your place. And what happened is that the buyer still wanted it. They applied with a new lender, and voila! All of a sudden, it comes in at 327, and it's just like, it's very interesting how those numbers can kind of float around. I mean, Joey, I'm sure you've seen different things. Where that can really be problematic though is with like an FHA loan, right, Joey? Did we lose him again?
No,
I mute myself because of my stupid typing. No, it does matter with FHA because once you have that FHA appraisal on the property, it's stuck to the property, right?
For how long?
I want to make something very clear. God, I know they just recently changed it, but 180 days. I think they changed it to 120 days recently. I'm going to double check though.
I thought it was 4 months, but 120 days.
Yeah, so 120 days. There you go. All right.
So that's you're not able to do this maneuver if it's an FHA. What if it's an FHA appraisal and then you get someone or they apply for conventional? Is it still stuck or is it only
the FHA appraisal is still there? But if they qualify for conventional, then the first thing that they would try to do is convert the FHA appraisal to a conventional appraisal. But at least you have the ability to potentially get a second appraisal ordered as conventional itself.
I see. Okay, interesting.
At the end of the day, the appraiser is the appraiser, right? Mm-hmm. So whether it's FHA, VA, conventional, if you get an appraiser who is trying to dictate the market, they're going to come in at a value that can not be great. What I enjoy is being able to get a second appraisal done when the math makes sense and the data makes sense, because then, hey, rock on. Obviously, you can't do it with FHA. But it gives you the chance to obviously bring that value up. I just had one in Florida that came in $60K short, got a second appraisal done because I was able to show that there were some errors in the original and the guy did not want to budge on his number. We got all of the value back on the second appraisal. So
that's interesting. I was always under the impression that if you're with that loan, that appraisal is basically the appraisal. I didn't realize that without applying for a new loan, you could get a second appraisal. How does that even work?
You have to literally show errors in the appraisal. Be like, hey, we have better comps. We have errors, like actual errors in price adjustments for. And so pools in Florida, and granted, I'm talking about Florida right now specifically because this is my last low appraisal, but they can swing value significantly because having a pool in Florida is kind of a big deal, right? So he was valuing a pool at $20K rather than $60K, which was the normal for the area. And I had enough appraisal history within like a mile of this place that I was like, guys, these adjustments are way the frick off. He's not adjusting. He's not. Yeah, I didn't say what you wanted me to say. He's not adjusting his appraisal. I think that we should be able to order a second appraisal without, causing any issues. And company agreed. So we went ahead, we ordered a second appraisal. And guess what? All of a sudden, the pools were adjusted at $100K, which I'm taking all day.
Wow, that's really interesting. Ryan, what are some techniques you use? I know you talked about meeting the appraiser at your listing. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there are some, you give them the comps that you think are good. But do you really make an effort to schmooze them and kind of, ingratiate yourself with the appraiser?
Yeah, I do bring comps, but I know that they don't, some appraisers are like, I don't care. Like I'm using my own. If I do anything, I do purposely go out of my way to be like super extra nice to the appraisers. Like
bring them a donut.
Yeah. I'm like, hey, do you want me, like if it's a vacant property, I'd be like, hey, do you want me to be there? Do you not want me to be there? And some of them are like, yeah, I don't want anybody there. I just want to get in, get out. I'm like, okay, well, here's the lockbox and so on and so forth. But yeah, I try to go out of all the people, I mean, other than my clients, the people I'm like the nicest to during the transaction is the appraiser. And it's funny because I had a deal a few years ago where my seller was really rude to the appraiser, and it caused issues, and it almost became like personal between the two, and it caused a lot of problems. And we ended up having to have the property have a second appraisal come out. It was the same appraiser. He had to come out twice because he insisted that there was something that wasn't repaired that should have been, and it was all stemmed because my seller was kind of mean to him.
I have a story about being super nice to an appraiser. So when I was trying to refi during COVID, the appraiser came out, and we got to talking. I told him, hey, I'm a real estate lawyer, blah, blah, blah. And we had such a rapport. He just so happened to be just about putting his condo on the market, and he hired me as his real estate lawyer to sell the condo.
Nice.
The refi fell through because of my building, and just that's another story. That's boring. But yeah, so definitely ingratiate yourself with the appraiser. It's a great idea. It's the same thing when I'm dealing with property managers. A property manager is generally going to have stuff that you want, and they have no motivation to treat you any differently than anyone else.
Right.
And so for me, my move is to always acknowledge that they have a tough job, and that basically all day long they just have people coming at them who probably don't understand how a condo works, which has got to be super annoying. And so acknowledge, hey, I know you got a tough job. I know I'm not like the number one priority, but hey, here's what I need. Here's what the client's needs are, and if you can help us out, that'd be great. Building that kind of rapport with a property manager can absolutely get you golden nuggets as far as what's going on in the condo. I was telling you guys at breakfast a story about a client who was trying to buy a place for her nephew to live in, and going through the governing documents, it was fairly clear to me that may not be an arrangement that's going to work in the building for reasons related to the rental cap. And I through some emails, I built some rapport with the property manager and was able to really dig in and figure out how seriously do they take this, or do they enforce it? And as it turns out, they take it really darn seriously. And I was able to maneuver the client out of that transaction where buying that place would have essentially been buying a condo and a lawsuit.
I'm just sitting here listening and stuff like that. But I want to touch back on the appraisals, and maybe this is you and Joey. I mean, do you guys, obviously you're going to do, what do they call it, comparative market analysis or something like that, and you're going to know what the value of the house is. You should know what the loan is. I mean, I know we could just throw out the word experience. I get it. But there is a way to do that sort of stuff, and where you find out and what you should expect to be. I mean, human beings make mistakes. I don't care what profession you're in. And when it comes down to somebody who's buying a house, that mistake is obviously going to interrupt them buying the house. And I guess that's where, how do you know that you're not wrong and they're not wrong? When it comes to that $20,000 difference.
Again, you just really have to know the market and look at the comps and try to get as apples to apples as you can, which in the city is a little bit more difficult, but you just have to really, if it's a 2-bed, 2-bath with parking in a mid-rise versus a high-rise, you have to just try to get as like as you can, and it really does come down to just knowing the market. But also it's when you go on the market and if you're getting a lot of showings, you're probably on target with your price, which we did. We got a lot of activity, and ironically enough, it was Memorial Day weekend. This was a few years ago. But it happened right around the same time, and we were still getting a lot of activity. And it really, I hate to just put it so plainly, but it really does come down to knowing the market and knowing what the comps are, and but also taking into account seasonality If I see a home that sold in October or November for, let's say, 400,000, well, I know that same home would probably sold for 450 in the spring. It's just knowing the seasonality, knowing the market cycles, and just knowing the market in general. It's I hate to put it so plainly, but it's the truth.
It needs to be said. That's not a bad thing.
Trust your gut.
Yeah.
Well,
Trust your gut.
Well, you got to back it up with facts. Am I mistaken on that? I mean,
That's
the gut.
that's where your gut comes up with
All
the right answer. When you say trust your gut, I mean the gut instinct is the more experience, the more information, the more knowledge you have, the more tuned in your gut's going to be. I got a very tuned in gut. I mean, it is like tuned in, man.
Speaking of tuning in, so tell me, let's say that client wants to buy that house that you were talking about earlier, that condominium, and they think that it's going to be a problem with letting somebody live there for free that's not a blood relative, all right? And they're doing something for a favor. And they're really adamant. I want this house. I'm willing to take that risk. All right. What do you do?
I've given them the advice they need to make the decision that's best for them. If they want to fight that, if they think, you know what, this is, I can't pass this up, for whatever reason. I mean, I would never recommend it. I wouldn't recommend anyone buy into a lawsuit. They were quite clear that this was going to be a major problem for them, and it's not like a 3-unit building; it's a high-rise building, so they'll have some dough to back that up. But if someone says, "Hey, I still want to pull the trigger on this," as long as we don't have a problem. I mean, this was a cash transaction, so we wouldn't have a lender coming in and raising issues. But as long as if it wasn't, as long as the lender can make it happen, even with all that, I don't know if that would trigger anything with the warrantability of the condo. But at the end of the day, it's the client's choice. It's the client's choice.
And that I couldn't agree with more. It's always our job is to give them education and let them know the ramifications of their decisions, but it's still ultimately their decision.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. I mean, if there was a different approach, if I'm like, no, you can't do this, like, the client would be like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Where that goes wrong really is where you've not done enough due diligence. You didn't find out all the information that was necessary. You made some assumptions that didn't necessarily pan out. And now your client bought the place thinking it was okay, and they weren't going to have an issue, and now they have an issue, and now they're coming back and saying, hey, I didn't get the proper advice, and it's your fault.
Yeah, and that's when the fastest fingers in the West come out.
Trust me.
And every complaint always starts, and I hate talking like I'm so experienced on complaints, and this is a little bit of a brag, I guess. We get about maybe 2 to 3 complaints a year. We really don't get a lot, all right? But the sentence always begins with, well, if you would have told me ahead of time, I would have negotiated for this. And, so they're throwing that stuff at you, but it's like, we did tell you.
Yeah.
These sort of things. Joey, I want to hear a little bit from you. Give me a little bit of a horror story. I know when we were chatting earlier, you said, well, this whole week.
I know. No, it's been fun.
Name names, please. Thank you.
Yeah, gosh, right. No, it is going to be closing tomorrow. But long story short, it was a flipper. They did a good job on the house, honestly. Well,
I'll argue that right now.
They did a good job. From what you could see, exactly. But honestly, if my buyer was not completely just utterly amazed with the house, I would have said the things that I wanted to say. It was overpriced at the listing. She wanted the house so bad, she still went over. It is a VA loan. It came in low value. It came in valued under what the list price was even. So we went 10K over on the contract, and then it came in 10K light on the appraisal based on the actual list price. So 20K difference, right? And like I'm this is the first VA reconsideration of value that I did not win. Right. Wow. I can usually get value added back. But this one, I was just like, dude, I have no comps anywhere that support your list price. and it is what it is. I did some work on the listing side. Like, guys, you know you're overpriced. Like, there's no way. And the agent on it was really good. She was really good about making sure they understood that it was obviously overvalued. We still closed higher than the appraised amount, but it's just, oh my gosh, it goes so much further. The after it appraised low, we had already had an attorney review letter that said we were going to prorate taxes based on the actual tax bill, without the exemptions applied, because there was a senior exemption and a homestead exemption on the property that do not qualify for the guy who owns the property currently because he's a flipper, right? So he owned the property in 2023, does not qualify for those exemptions. The tax bills aren't out yet, so we were trying to prorate based on the actual taxed amount without those exemptions applied, because that's what my buyer is going to be paying. They refused to. So now I got a $3,000 gap in tax prorations that I have to miracle additional funds from. It's a disaster. And, the selling side was not willing to do anything to get the deal closed other than, we're just going to take it back on the market. And if my buyer didn't want the house so bad, I would have lost my mind on them. Long story short, we did a lot of asset updating. We did a lot of. I'm going negative on this one. I'm actually losing funds to close this one, so my branch will lose money. I'm going no comp on it, but just to get it closed, it just sucks when the things can be so much easier with a little bit of cooperation, and there's just a side that don't want to cooperate.
Joey, I have
understand
fought
why
that
you've been
fight.
getting it. Yeah.
I have fought that fight on the exemptions, and sometimes I win, and sometimes I don't. I've had shouting matches with lawyers. I had one recently within the past few months where I literally had a shouting match with a lawyer. I'm like, this is what the contract says. This is what the contract says. You do not get to you don't get to take advantage of exemptions that the property doesn't apply for in a given year. In the tax, it says it, and he's just like, well, it's going to roll over. I don't care. And you have the conversation with the client where it's like, look, is he right? Is he not? I mean, he's probably right, and it's 51%. But that's irrelevant, because what the contract says is what the contract says, and he's just like, no, I don't care. And I was like, well, next time I am in this argument, I'm going to cite your law, and I won't name his name, but hey, the precedent is this. I was going to say a word that really this mean guy. Not the word I wanted to use. He says that the contract doesn't matter, that the words of the contract don't matter, and he has his own rule about it. And on the opposite hand, I have a client who we worked out 180% tax proration.
Did you say 180?
Yeah, because that's how much the assessed valuation was going up. This was in the south suburbs, so for 23 and 24, the assessed valuation of the property was going up like 82%. So I asked for 180 without any exemptions, and same situation where we had a couple of exemptions applied. We turned what would have been about $3,500 worth of tax credits into about 6 plus 85, 9,000.
Do you need more fingers?
Well, here's the thing. I said to my client, hey, not for nothing, because they were thrilled. They saw the original figures, and it didn't really occur to them what it was. And then when we revised the figures, and I was like, here's what it is, they were like, oh my God, I looked like an absolute rock star. Which makes me feel good, because they brought in like $7,500 for cash to close, and they walked away with about $5,000 of it, because we were able to get those tax credits raised up to what they should be. And if what should happen happens, where those exemptions are pulled until they qualify, which will be in 2025, payable 2026, then they have enough of the seller's money to cover it. And I know the seller wasn't happy about it, but this is reality. And it's something, because I had that shouting match with that lawyer, back in January, it's now something I have to point out in attorney review. We're not going to prorate the taxes based on the billed amount. We're going to prorate it based on that plus adding back whatever exemptions as per the contract. This is not a modification. I have to be really, really plain and blunt about it. But if I don't point it out and get them to agree to that, I run the risk of having a shouting match with a lawyer at closing, which I only do that once every like 2 years. But if I have to get nasty with someone, I will get nasty. It's the Roadhouse, the first Roadhouse rule. Be nice, be nice, be nice until it's time to not be nice, and then I get nasty.
I'm just curious. Do you find that there are a lot of attorneys out there that don't even understand or know everything that's on the contracts? Do you find that pretty frequently?
Frequently. I wouldn't necessarily say frequently. If the name on the other side is someone I recognize, and you know the usual suspects.
Yeah.
I know the guy that you use, and if I saw him, I'd be like, yeah, we're good. He knows what he's doing. But if you see someone, and I'm going to call lawyers out again on this. If I see someone with an Ameritech.net, SBCglobal.net, Comcast.net, Hotmail, AOL, Yahoo. Even Gmail.
Do you know what the
I did see a CompuServe.
Do you know what the Mendoza line is in baseball?
200. Yeah.
Yep. So I always say that those like AOL, Ameritech, those email extensions are the Mendoza line for real estate. That's when you know you need to hang it up.
I'm telling you, and even a lot of real estate brokers do the same thing. To be like, my realtor Ryan at gmail.com. It's like, bruh, just register myrealtorryan.com and then you can have Ryan and my realtor. It's just, and I know where some of that comes from. They subscribe to some particular guru who is like, yeah, you need to have something about real estate in your email address. Go register a Gmail account. It's like bad advice. Bad advice. Listen, you can register a domain name for like $12 a year if you get no bells and whistles. Do that. And you can have it with the Gmail interface like I do. If you're worried about, here's what the worry is with some of these people. They go, well, this is like my calling card. If I give up this email address that so many of my former clients have, I am going to end up losing those clients. Just have it forwarded. It's so simple. It is
you can do that?
Bleeping
I'm
simple.
talking like a boomer now, aren't I?
You can, and Mr. Boomer, you need to be. If you don't, if you're not. If this information,
watch it. There's still a lot of us out there.
Well, sure, but it's fine. Right. If it's not in your wheelhouse, if you feel uncomfortable with it, you don't want to learn it, there are thousands of people you can hire that will set this up for you, and it's not going to cost that much.
Or get the grandchildren to do that sort of stuff. Right?
Someone's got an ornery teenager that might want $100 for something.
Whoa. $100. I mean, when did we get over $3.75 an hour?
Moneybags Bellefontaine. This is why he is Moneybags Bellefontaine, because I
learned it all from Jack Benny. So you need to watch that for Go Ahead and Money Things.
That's one for the youngins. Moneybags Bellefontaine chucking around nickels like they're manhole covers. If anyone knows what that's referenced to,
it's the wooden nickels you got to watch out for. I don't know. So, Joey, we got you. We got Patrick. Did we get it? Yeah, we got a horror story from you. We got that. And I'm gonna share mine since we got a little bit. I just talked about it yesterday. We did a home inspection report for a property in Deerfield, and it was a flip. And I always get aggravated, but I didn't know it was a flip. And I go through the reports usually right before I get on a Zoom call with our clients to go over the reports with them, just so I could familiar myself. And then one of the first questions I like to ask the clients is, how do you feel about, how do you feel about the house now that you went through a process like this, meaning the home inspection? And that's when I expect them to tell me what's serious in their minds and everything else. And they're giving me the GFIs are serious and everything else. I'm like, okay, don't get me wrong, they're important, I get it, but they're cheap to fix. So I kind of back off a lot on those things, because we're not talking a lot of money, and I believe they should be fixed wholeheartedly, but we're talking $35-$50 tops, to get that stuff done. But this one here, I'm looking at it, and we got, I want to say there were 10 temporary posts. None of them, and this is in a crawl space.
And they were like real rusty. I saw these pictures.
Because there was a ton of mold growing in there, and they still had a lot of water coming in there. That crawl space was heavily wet and water was coming through it. They spray foamed with closed-cell foam around the outside of the foundation wall and up over the rim joist, so I couldn't see anything going on in the wall, but you could just see all the water coming through the foam, and with all the dark stains on there. Now,
No duct tape?
No duct tape. But these posts and the beams, they were, less than 2 feet from the foundation wall. Okay, none of this is normal. All right, that comes on here. And I'm like, I'm not afraid of what I can see, but I'm more afraid of, what I can't see.
And the posts were on like dirt or gravel. They weren't even on proper footings, right?
No, and I'm trying to explain all that to a client. I said, if you put a footing on here, it's got to be 3 feet by 3 feet, 12 inches thick, in order to make it supportive. And then you're looking at some of these beams were actually bent between the floor joists. It's like you're putting it under, nobody designed this thing. They didn't use permanent equipment. So, and just to give everybody a heads up who's listening, if it is a temporary post, there's going to be a bunch of holes in those posts where you put pins into them so that you could adjust the height. Permanent posts don't have those holes and pins. They come in predetermined. They're all going to have screw jacks because there's no way to tilt it in, but you want to look for the holes to be permanent or temporary. And of course, the permanent ones are more expensive. And but it's like I'm like, how come you didn't see this as a big deal? And his response was, well, you guys marked it as an orange. So yeah, we do color code everything in there, and yeah, I'm doing a little client bashing, and I'm sorry, but it's like I'm trying to be very polite on this stuff, and it's like all of this is important, and especially if it's important to you that comes in there, but to tell me that you didn't even look at it because it wasn't color coded. I mean, that's the one absolute thing that I just don't want to do for anybody is make a decision for them.
Right.
I want to give them the knowledge and education so they make an intelligent decision, but they just relied on, well, we're only going to argue with things that are red, and they weren't going to negotiate anything anyway because it was one of those as-is things, but I don't know what's going on. I can't give you good coaching.
As is... To me, I mean, there's a level you reach where it's like, this isn't the way that this house is at the moment. And I saw the pictures is that you're gonna have one day you're gonna be walking through your kitchen and that thing's gonna be one of those jack posts is gonna be rusted out and it's gonna snap and you're gonna fall 3 inches and you're gonna go, oh, what happened? Well, you just lost some of the foundational support of your home, and you're saying there's 10 of these things. I mean, it's a ticking time bomb, and to think that somebody was going to sell another person a home that had that kind of ticking time bomb, and if you're a flipper, even if you don't realize that is a problem, that's a you problem. That's a you problem. It means that you probably shouldn't be flipping homes if you think that jack posts are okay to leave and pass on to to an unwitting unprofessional consumer.
Yeah,
tell me, Ryan. I mean,
I was going to say the buyer's agent really should have stepped up there and said, hey, this is a major concern.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how much experience the buyer's agent had.
Not enough.
Gotcha.
Not enough.
There really is. There's a lot of knowledge that comes into real estate.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of knowledge that we all, me included, take for granted.
Right.
All right. But you go back to the you don't know what you don't know stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to criticize somebody else I'll criticize my profession. My son's listening right now and he keeps asking me for money, through the YouTube link on in here. I know. He's like, can I have $100? I'm not even going to respond to him.
$3.75 is what you're getting.
Exactly.
Joey, I got a quick question for you. In a situation like that where an appraiser is going in and doing the appraisal, is that something they would call out as a minimum property requirement, or even on a conventional, would they say this is because I mean this property is ultimately going to be the collateral for your loan. If there's something so deficient as the half of the house is supported by temporary supports, I would think that an appraiser would at least put something about it in the appraisal. I don't know. Would that come up?
It's a very prejudicial statement. It really is. Not all appraisers are the same, and you know that.
No, but I mean, they have rules they have to go by. It's not like they have no guidelines whatsoever, and they're just all out there, you know.
I don't think it's in the NPRs, is it, Joey?
I mean, structural support.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but who's
Yeah.
to determine? I mean, there is structural support there, but now
I mean,
Charlie's saying it's not good enough.
If at the end of the day, an appraiser is generally going to flag that, and even if they don't, if there are pictures, and I don't care what kind of loan that is, right? If this house is temporarily held up, then that's going to be an issue across the board. They're going to want it fixed prior to closing. Otherwise, your collateral is essentially in the eyes of a lender, but nothing. Because if we don't have a permanent solution to the structure of the property, then you're gonna run into a world of hurt
But
potentially.
why would I expect an appraiser to recognize the difference between a permanent post or a temporary post?
What an appraiser would do is they would just flag as needing a report from a structural engineer. Generally, they're going to say that. I mean, at the end of the day, you can technically go off to someone like Charlie who can be like, yeah, this is temporarily held up and needs to be fixed. But we would just get a report that says whether or not it's sound from someone who's a professional in the field. That's what they're looking for.
And I do that. I do plenty of those FHA and VA certifications and stuff like that. And there's sometimes, I'll get a crack in the basement with water coming in, and they're looking for a structural certification. And I'm sorry, but I'm rolling my eyes.
It's not really a structural thing, is it?
I don't think so. I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't want water coming in here, but we're talking $500 to seal the darn crack, And it's true.
Unless it's
it's how
deflecting,
much
right?
it's going to go. And it wasn't. It was just a typical crack with water coming in that could easily be fixed.
I mean, I'm just trying to think of.
But this harms people. They're
Right.
paying me $300+ to drive out there and say that everything's okay when a little bit of knowledge could have saved time, headache, money, a whole bunch of stuff.
Well, I guess the reason I'm asking Joey about that is because I want to kind of have the peace of mind that somebody in the process is going to catch this, even if you don't, even if the agent didn't, the buyer doesn't understand. I mean, if they hired me, I'm absolutely going to be like, y'all, this is a problem. This is going to be a major problem if either the seller or you don't fix it soon. And
or
it's
even
not
when you
cheap.
go to sell, and I get it. Well, right now, everything's easy to sell. It's a seller's market. Yeah, but wait till the 8s come. It seems like 18, 08, something like that. It seems like there's always a dip. I'm waiting for 28. There'll probably be another one.
It goes up. The market will never stay the same. It'll go up. It'll go down. It'll be a seller's market. It'll be a buyer's market. The problem I have is I don't know when. Yeah. I don't know when.
Right.
So I just got to deal with
If you did,
now.
you wouldn't be sitting here with us.
Well,
I'd be a mortgage broker for the frontline team. I'd be Nostradamus over there if I could predict the future. Speaking of which, are Bears going to do good or bad this year?
Yeah, that's where I got cut off earlier. No, they're going to be. I'm going 9-8.
9-8.
All right, I'll take it.
The winning season, not going to make the playoffs.
Not going to make the playoffs. Yes.
All
Bears.
right, Bears Super
winning the
Bowl.
NFC North.
Yes.
And they're going to get a bye in the first through the wild card.
I suck at this.
Yes. This is
I'm
what
all
we were
excited
hoping
right now.
Yes.
Yeah, I gotta
Excellent.
see. Are they playing in Arizona this year? I gotta get into a game. Shoot.
Sounds good. Hey, Joey, we missed a halfway point. We are running short on time. Give us your contact information again, please.
Oh, why, yes, sir. Joey Matthews, the VA Loan Nerd. You can find me at thevaloannerd.com. Across all the social medias as at the VA Loan Nerd. You can call or text me at 630.
Sounds good. Patrick, please.
Instagram, Loftus_law. TikTok, Loftus Law.
Sounds good. Notice how I'm shortening everybody up. Ryan, please.
Ryan Mckane, my cell phone 708-668-6613 on all the socials. Ryan Mckane or RPM Chicago or Mint Properties. That's Mint with a Y, MYNT Properties.
Follow
Ryan,
us. We're awesome.
And Ryan, I do enjoy your company. We did
Likewise.
open up a new YouTube channel. We're going to start putting our videos there, and that's going to end up being homebuyer'shour.com. So Homebuyer's Hour. Just Homebuyer's Hour. My name is Charlie Belfontaine. Special thank you to Devin Tingle, our producer, and